I'm Lynn C, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi.
I'm not used to that. I use my last name in meetings. Like Dr. Bob, I see no reason to be anonymous within the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you need to find me, I want you to be able to find me. And I haven't had to take a drink since my first meeting on May the 20th of 1985, and for that I'm truly, truly grateful. I'm one of those one-chip wonders. They wonder how the hell she could have done that. As crazy as that woman was. Anyway, Terry is one of my special guys at White Oak. I just love him. We don't see him as much as we used to, but, you know, we see him often enough. Those first few months of sobriety, we saw him real often. We have the White Oak group meets at the Heights Club off of 22nd and Lawrence, and we have a 9:30 candlelight meeting every night. And that's our third location since January of 2000 when we opened that group. I have no idea what I may or may not tell you. I was taught not to rehearse. The first time I was asked to speak, I had 122 days, and a man who's gone now, Jack Goodnight, hauled me over to a place called New Horizons, and he said, what you do is you go in the bathroom about 5 minutes before the meeting, you get on your knees and say, God, let the words be thine, the voice be mine, and then you get behind the podium and you just allow it to flow, and you allow God to guide you as to what needs to be said for whichever person there is here that you're supposed to say it to. And sometimes the person that benefits the most is me, because I hear things. Oh, wow. Where'd that come from? Anyway, I am a well-brought-up Southern Baptist girl. I was born in Wichita Falls, Texas, and we moved here when I was a little over a year old. I come from a nice, sweet little Southern Baptist family. I have one sibling. My sister Barbara is 4.5 years older than I am. Mary Poppins is very nearly perfect. She's still married to the man she married when she was 16 and he was 19. And they survived together on a little private lake outside of Livingston, and neither one of them should ever be behind the wheel of a car. They are. And they should not be living alone with just the two of them trying to take care of each other. But they are. And she should listen to her sister, who just retired after 25 years as a pediatric home health therapist, and she doesn't. So, we got that straightened out, right? I had a normal childhood, a very good childhood, Girl Scouts, church. Every time Park Place Baptist Church opened its doors, we were there. It's all there was to it. We were there every night of the week for something or another. And I grew up in a family where I was taught that working and producing in life was what made you a human being. Lazy was not allowed. Chinchy was not allowed. Now, my parents were very frugal, but the one thing they insisted on was paying their own way. And I appreciate that early training. I appreciate the fact that I was scared to death of my mother. If you got a call from the school that there was a problem in class, that wasn't going to be the big problem. The big problem was when you got home. How dare you embarrass me like that at the school? Some of us of my age know how that went. And the thing about it is there's a whole lot of problems I could have gotten into in my life had I not had an idea of what consequences looked like. I sobered up at the grand old age of 38 years old. My children were 15 and 17 years old. I was a raving drunk in between husbands. What else can I say? Before I got married the first time, I was 19 when I got married the first time, and my drinking was renowned. I had this one talent in life. I could outdrink everybody there and still drive them home and get home. Sometimes I didn't make it in the house, but I could always get home with my car. I've never had a DWI. Only been in one little altercation with the law. We'll talk about that later. But I can remember the first drink I ever took. It was a single beer. I was out with my girlfriend's mom and dad, and we were at a dance hall off Lawndale. I grew up in the southeast part of Houston. And they allowed us one Falstaff beer. You couldn't have got me to drink a Falstaff right before I got here with a gun to my head. But at the time, it was the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me. I had one beer. I didn't get drunk. I didn't do stupid things. I just felt okay. I felt like everybody else always looked like they felt. Like they had the instructions of life and I missed them. And that one beer filled a hole in my gut that just needed to be filled badly. And whenever I got opportunity to have a drink, I did. It didn't happen very often. I was 12 when that happened. Didn't happen very often, but when it did, I took full advantage of it. I met my husband, the Baptist Sunday school teacher, in a nightclub. He was wonderful. He had a Cajun mother, crazy woman, and a 2-year-old that he was in the process of getting custody of. And I fell in love with the Cajun mother and the 2-year-old. I liked him real well, but I fell in love with the two of them. I was 18 and he was 9 years older than I was, and he was wonderful, and he'd worked at the light company for years and years, and you know, it's a long, funny story how that all happened, and I don't have time to tell it. I've discovered if I tell everything, all the funny, hilarious things, and the horrible, pathetic things, I run out of time about halfway through. So, needless to say, we got married after about 2 years, and then about 2 years later, our first child was born, and our darling daughter, Catherine. And we had planned, see, he was an only child, and I was one of two, so we knew that was what was wrong with our life. So we decided we'd have 4 children as quickly as we could, and then we'd have this big happy family and everything would be wonderful. And I basically quit drinking when we got married. I became what I was raised to be, which was a sweet little Baptist housewife and mother. And when I was pregnant with our second child, 5.5 months, and my daughter was 13 months old, when Stanley drowned in a canoe accident in Huntsville State Park. So at the ripe old age of 22, I'm standing on the bank watching them seine the lake for my husband's body, thinking, oh, it's not true. They're going to find him in the weeds somewhere, you know, where he's crawled up and passed out. And it was true. He was dead, and I was suddenly the adult parent of 1.5 children with no idea how to do that. I had never been inside our bank. You know, I would drive him there on payday. He'd let me keep the car, go to Piggly Wiggly, do the grocery shopping. I'd come back, pick him up. We'd go to the bank. He'd go in, take care of the man stuff, and come out, and we'd go pay the grocery bill. So it was a scary and horrible time. And I knew the one thing on earth that would make everything okay. 1/5 of whatever would do it. And I curled up around my 13-month-old baby in the bed and smoked cigarettes and drank until I passed out every night. There were a few nights that I seriously considered suicide, and I believe that my alcoholism saved me from that, because once you drink enough, you don't give a damn. And, you know, that's just it. And as long as I could drink, I didn't have to change any of my behaviors. I didn't have to straighten up. I didn't have to anything. I was single for 18 months. I met Mr. Wonderful on a trail ride. We got married 8 months later, and his brother was a Baptist minister. I married the wrong brother. Anyway, and he was a bad drunk, and I was a bad drunk, and we had a lot of yelling and screaming and throwing things. I would throw things, and he would throw me. But he never doubled up his fist and hit me, so therefore it wasn't abuse, you know. And so we were married for 3 whole wonderful years, and we moved to, too long a story, we ended up in Algoa, Texas, outside of Alvin. And after a particularly bad night and weekend, he was on the roof, 2-story house with a 3rd-story roof, and he was on the roof fixing something, and I was holding the ladder. And I thought, you know, if I kick this ladder here, he'll land in those bushes over there, and that will just make him mad. But if I kick it here, he'll land on that concrete driveway, and my problems will be over. And then I heard me think that, and it was like, I don't know about the rest of you, but I have thoughts I don't intend to think. Sometimes it's about y'all. But anyway, I noticed that I was planning to murder him. And I'm not a murderer, you know. So I went to a lawyer the next week and divorced him and saved his life. So I've tried being a good girl and being married and being a nice wife and a nice mother and doing the whole thing and cooking and baking and all that stuff. I can still cook and bake and all that stuff, but it's on my time frame. It's not on anybody else's. Anyway, so I decided I would stay single now. So I stayed single for 5 years. And it was getting bad, you know. I mean, you're single and your kids are old enough that you can leave with a babysitter. What else do you have to do? You know, and I was in the sales business, so there's a lot of drinking in the sales business and a lot of lying in the sales business, and I could lie to myself with the best of them, you know. And I had live-in housekeepers that took care of my kids so I could go out and work and make money. So that was reasonable. If I'd been a man, nobody would have questioned that. Yeah, right. And so I'm out one night having a good old time. And I've got a girlfriend with me, and there's a guy that I talk to on the phone all the time. Never met him in person. We met him in person that night. He took us out to dinner, and then we got away from him. And we showed up somewhere, one of our normal haunts, and he showed up. And then we went somewhere else, and he showed up. And then we went to yesterday once more, and he showed up. And she looked at me, and she said, "What are you going to do about this?" I said, "Watch." A man came out of the men's room. I grabbed him by the arm. I said, "You are gorgeous. I want to dance with you." Well, I married him 4 weeks later. And you know, in the 4 weeks, I never noticed that he really didn't drink. He was another Cajun. At White Oak, they get to the 9-month shift, we use heavy metal, and they say, "Kunas gold" for Lynn's 2 late Cajun husbands. Anyway, so, you know, I didn't notice he really didn't drink, and he wasn't one of us. He wasn't somebody who would look at you and say, "Get your lush butt out of that chair and come home." No, he'd just say, "Don't you remember? You wanted to stop at Sears Warehouse on the way home, and if we don't leave now, they'll be closed." And I'd get up and follow him out. We went into business for ourselves about 6 months after we got married. We worked out of the house for the first 7 months, and then we rented a shop in Pasadena where his former company he worked for was. His boss was a raving drunk. Jimmy had run the business for years. And when Jimmy quit, well, the business went down the tubes. So the owner of the building called and asked Jimmy if he'd like to rent it, and we moved there. We had a charmed life. The big book talks about a heavy drinker with a good enough reason can still quit. He was my reason. He thought my drinking was amazing, that anybody could drink like that. Still walking, talking, driving. He was a class act Al-Anon. I wished he had survived long enough to get here. But when we were married about 6.5, 7 years, he came down with heart trouble, and we went through a 1.5 years of trying to save his life, and were not able to. And at the last 6 months or so, he moved to his mother's in Louisiana in a fit of Al-Anon, mad at me. And he moved in there. He moved because of my drinking. I was only drinking because he was dying. That's not fair, you know. But, you know, that's when you can't move forward and you can't move backward and you can't breathe where you are, a fifth will fix it. And it fixed it. Jimmy Gilbo died of a massive coronary at the age of 39 years old in the kitchen of his girlfriend's house in Abbeville, Louisiana. He moved over there with his mom. He built a porch on the back. They'd sit out and have tea every night. She introduced him, this girl that worked with her, and they were just having a wonderful time, and he was planning to divorce me. So, you know, it happened. A few weeks later, I had a lot of bills to pay, and usually I just say I had a lot of bills to pay, you know, bar tabs. Or I had a lot of bills to pay and funeral expenses that needed to be paid. You know, his mother was a working woman in retail. And I decided, I had a suggestion made to me that I could do this little deal, and I could come up with enough money that it would cover all those bills. So I'm sitting in the parking lot of Bennigan's restaurant with 5 pounds of marijuana on the back floorboard in open paper grocery bags, drunk as a skunk, without enough sense to leave when the guy's 45 minutes late that I've never met on this pager. And the police showed up, and they seemed to know what they were looking for. And they put me in handcuffs, and they put me in the car. And I've always known that if you tried to put me in jail, my heart would stop and I would die. So, of course, I'm bawling, squalling, slinging snot in the back, and they're taking me to jail. And you know what? My heart didn't stop. After half an hour or so, I did mention I was drunk. It became an adventure. Wow, isn't this exciting? I'm going to jail. And I got there, and there were crazy people in that drunk tank. The one I really just was drawn to, her name was Willie, and she really shouldn't be there. And her husband had her truck, and she couldn't drive that truck. She had another vehicle, but he had her truck, and he was down at the beer joint with another woman. And she went down there to take her keys away, and she got them, but she can't drive the truck. So she was holding a knife on him to get in the truck and drive it home when they arrested her. How unfair is that? He was cheating. And Willie was a trip. And all these gals were fun and crazy. I got out of jail the next day. I spent one night in jail for 5 pounds of marijuana, which is a major miracle. We went to court forever, and I got 5 years deferred adjudication, probation, and a $500 fine. I got off scot-free, got in my car, left the courthouse, went straight to Booty's on Canal Street, sat him up with tequila, drank till 2 in the morning. We left and drove to Galveston in my Mustang convertible, inconspicuous. And I thought the next morning, you're going to have to be a little more careful about this driving. For the next 6 weeks, I did everything in my power to not drive my car after I got drunk. It never occurred to me to not drink, so I wouldn't be driving drunk. It just, who doesn't drink? Is there anybody in this room, before they got to AA the first time, that thought it was impossible to even consider the idea of not drinking? I rarely see hands. Oh, there's one back there, Lord. Anyway, it never crossed my mind. And I got to AA, and they laughed when I told them that. Amazing. I went to my first meeting at the Legacy Club in Pasadena. I walked in the door. A woman asked me if I was here for the meeting. Yes, ma'am. I was dressed, had my makeup on. Like today, this is a very big rarity. I'm surprised Terry recognized me. Anyway, so I walk in the door. This woman asked me. I said, yes, ma'am, I'm here for the meeting. What's your name? I told her, sit right here. We'll be with you in a minute. I turned to her friend, started talking about God. God got me up this morning, brought me my coffee just like I like it. I thought, oh my God, it is a nest of Baptists. This is not going to work. You understand, God had always screwed me over twice. Both those husbands should not have died at 29 and 39 years old. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I heard in that church that I was raised in, I heard in my thinking that if I did the things I was supposed to do, I would be rewarded with good things. Those were not good things, and I was plenty mad. So I decided not to run, because if you run, they will follow you, and they'll come to your house on Tuesday night for visitation. I've been there. I've been on the squad, So I sat quietly through the meeting. I'm looking for the profanity sign. Oh, nope, we're taped, so Patsy will kill me if I use the language. So, during the meeting, Peaches chaired the meeting. She used the words God and MF in the same sentence. Immediately, I thought, I may be able to stay a while. So when I see those profanity signs, I always want to say, oh, please don't do that, because somebody's life may depend on hearing a few words, okay? We'll clean up later. I still haven't, but we might. Anyway, so that's my introduction to AA. I don't remember really anything else in that meeting. At the end of it, I do, because they gave out chips. I'm not spooking anybody, I'm not moving, I'm not breathing. And then they got up, and I had my purse, and they got in a circle, and they held hands. And oh my God, what are they doing now? We're going to have a baptism. No. And she looked across at me, and she said, would you lead us out? I don't know where she wants to go. I said, no, thank you, ma'am. So somebody else started the Lord's Prayer, and I'm like, oh, man, I could have done that. I got to do that. Just tell me what you want. I'll do it. Just tell me what you want. I'll do it has been my motto my whole life up until the age of 38. I never had a real opinion of anything. I was always of whatever opinion it was you needed from me. Oh, you like to fish? Sure. Do you like to do this? Sure. I mean, I've been married twice by then, 3 times by then, and I still don't know what I like to do, because I liked whatever he did, I wanted to be a part of. And I was a drunk, so I could be a part of whether I don't care if I'm drinking, I don't care where I am or what I'm doing, is there enough booze? So I didn't get a desired chip. I didn't stay very long after that meeting. The people holding my hand thought they'd been holding a phantom out the door. I don't know where I went or what I did that day, but what I didn't do was I didn't drink that day. I came back at 8 o'clock. There was a round robin where they chose people from the podium. They'd speak a few minutes and they'd choose somebody else. A guy named Mac Mahaffey, he's gone now too, graduated sober. He was behind the podium and he talked about getting to AA. He'd never been to jail. He'd never had a marriage fail because of alcohol. He'd never been fired from a job because of alcohol. And I thought, here's the one. These other people, oh my God, I understand why they had to get sober. Oh shit, wow! But I'm different. I'm barely an alcoholic. I've never done all those things. And then he kept talking. I hated it when they kept talking. They talked right up to where I was somewhat able to control, not my drinking, I never tried to do that, but, control and enjoy. Yeah. Did you ever enjoy it when you had to control it? I used to go to funerals and meet my mother at church, and I'd park a night-day funeral home across Broadway so I could leave my booze in the car, one with ice, one without, and not get caught. Anyway, so Mac continued to talk. And he went back out, and this and this happened, went back out, and this and this, went back out, and this and this. I'm like, oh man, I'm sinking in the chair. This is, you have an option. You can get sober now, at least for a little while. Not for a long time, but just a little while. I mean, I had a paid for bar stool out there. I'm not leaving it. I'm a barfly. There's nothing on earth I ever enjoyed as much as hanging off a bar stool, talking crap to a bunch of other people going nowhere, doing nothing. And we had to get back as soon as we could the next day to find out what had happened overnight. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But I became convinced that I needed to quit for a little while. I didn't mention. That judge told me pointedly that if I messed up the probation, I would do 15 years flat. I'm pretty sure now he was lying, but I didn't think he was then. And I didn't like the one night in jail, and I darn sure knew I would not like the 15 years. So I had to quit for a while, and I got a desire chip that day, and then they really jump on you like frogs on jukebox. And I kind of like that. I'm an alcoholic schizophrenic. Help me, help me, help me. Don't touch me and don't talk to me. So it was kind of difficult. I am a loner. Most people don't understand that know me, and they don't realize that, but I'm a loner. I live alone. Well, I live alone for the last year, for the first time ever in my life, I've lived alone. I got to back up for a second. I went in the bathroom about 15 minutes before this meeting, and I got on my knees, and I did what Jack Goodnight told me to do. I asked God to let the words be thine and the voice be mine. And then I came out, and I'm roaming around, and I see a lady in black across the room, and I thought, I know her from somewhere. This happens all of the time to me. I know her from somewhere, and she came over and she said, yada, 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 and you detoxed me one time. Whew. And I'm like, okay, God, you're here, I'm okay. Anyway, we'll talk more about that in a minute. We're about to get sober. So, I got sober. I used to hear a lot of rumors. Sweet, nice people who loved me dearly would come to me and say, I heard something about you, and I need to know what's really going on. At the end of one of those good old bad AA relationships, I had a lot of them in the first year or so. And, or they would hear the rumor that Lynn was at the meeting the other day and she was drunk or high on something. No, she was cold sober and never touched anything after that day, May the 20th of 1985. But suddenly, I'm living in the world that I could not survive in without a fifth of something a day. And I'm doing it without any anesthetic, without any, let me give you this pill to make it feel better, to make it easier for you to stay sober. And had I had insurance when I got here, I probably would have died drunk, because for me, anything that took the edge off of my feelings would have kept me from ever talking to God. Do you remember I was mad as hell at God? I was, and I wasn't talking to him for anybody or anything. He had screwed me, no way. So, fortunately, I became very, very miserable in sobriety. I'd be laughing and giggling, walk in the Legacy Club, go back to get my popcorn, and come back from the popcorn machine bawling and squalling. I had no idea what was going on. They had no idea what was going on. My sponsor, Peaches, who I didn't ask for 90 days because I didn't want to get the wrong sponsor, you know. This was a major, important decision. I had to get the best, the perfect one. I finally asked her, and she said, I thought that's what I was doing. And then she explained to me that actually, until I actually ask somebody to sponsor me, even if I'm using them as a sponsor, they're not sponsoring me. Until I give them permission to tell me their truth and guide me, I haven't taken that step of being open and willing to at least listen. And probably she was right, and probably the reason I didn't ask her is I didn't want to be obligated to listen to her. I have a bad tendency to be hard-headed. Okay, so I'm sober, I'm crazy, things aren't going real well. I get it that I'm powerless over alcohol. Barely got it. I got it more in the 4th step than I did in the 1st step. But I get it that I'm powerless, that I can't drink right now or things are going to screw up. I get it that I'm really sneaking around AA, taking what you have to straighten my life out so I can go back where I belong. You know, but I'm not talking about that out loud. I just know that, you know, unlike you poor unfortunates who are stuck here forever, I'm different, and I just need a quick course until I can handle my booze. So I go through one. I look around me in the rooms, and I have to admit that there are a whole lot of people here who were much worse than I was and did horrible things that will haunt them for life. And they say that they're sober by the grace of this God that I don't want to talk to. I'm at the Way Out Women's Center on New Year's Eve day with Dodie M, and we are chopping up vegetables for vegetable trays, and we're talking about it gets better and turning your will and your life over to God, and I don't understand God, and I don't want to talk to Him. And she said, you know, you're not talking to a him, you're not talking to an it, you're talking to a power that is able to keep me sober. And you can't figure it out. You have to practice it out. You have to practice turning your will and your life over to this entity as if it will work, and then see what happens. So we went in the living room and got down on our knees, and we did the 3rd step. Shortly thereafter, in the next day or so, I had a, what do you call them? I had a message came my way. I needed to understand the futility of arguing with God. And the elephant in the burrow was born. My conception of God, which has changed and gotten deeper over the years, but it's still, the basis of it is an elephant in a burrow hooked in a harness together. Who do you think decides where they're going? What do you think are the odds of that burro taking over the reins and running anything? Very slim. God's will is not optional. I gave my will to God and then I took it back. No, sorry. God doesn't give it back because you never had it in the first place. God's will is not optional. It will happen. It does happen, period. I have 2 options, and that both of those entail how I go along with God's will. I can get up under the breastbone of that elephant, safe and secure. The rain doesn't bother me. The wind doesn't bother me. Nothing bothers me, and I get the instructions each step as to where we're going next. Or I can be dragged over every rock in the path. And there are times with 33 years of recovery that I think, I'm not going, drag me. And it works the same way every time. Every time it works the same way, whether I'm doing it accidentally or deliberately. If I'm not going along with God's will, the results are not going to be good. And I have an option to go along with God's will or to be really, really miserable. And if I make myself miserable enough, I will justify myself taking up a drink. Okay, we got the God thing. At 4 months sober, my daughter, 17 years old, packed her bags and moved. She didn't like recovery at all. You're gone all the time. You're just still gone all the time. It doesn't make any difference. bitch, 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 whenever you come home. We had one rule. One rule was you cannot bring drugs into my house. I didn't say anything about beer, so they were still playing cards with their friends and 4 or 5 kids in the living room, and I'd come home and I'd walk in the door and they'd be smoking dope and drinking beer, and I'd scream for a minute or two. I'd go back and get in my car and go back down to the old 24-hour club. I sobered up at the old 24-hour club on Harrisburg. No question about it. I was there 4 or 5 nights a week in the middle of the night. I don't go crazy at noon. I go crazy at midnight, And I would go down there, and then I'd calm down, and then I'd go back home. I'd start to pull in the driveway, go into panic, turn around, go back down there, They'd have me another cup of coffee, in and out. I thought it was so wonderful that God put those people right there for me. It took me years to figure out they were down there at 3 in the morning because they were crazy. I was their solution, not vice versa. I still send my girls over there and take them over there, even though they still smoke and it kills me. But I don't go over there very often unless I'm taking something. When I had Kathy moved out, I had a 5-bedroom, 3 bedrooms in the front, 2 bedrooms with a separate add-on in the back of the house, and I immediately started renting rooms to other people in the program. Can't have a dead space. And they were all crazy, and they were all less than a year sober. And of 10 that I knew of 10 years after that were still sober. They were all still sober. I don't know what happened to most of them since then. Let me think, what else? 8 months sober. Well, they're still sober 10 years later, but they weren't real responsible about paying their rent every week. And see, I had to pay the rent the first month, and I had to pay the light bill or we wouldn't have lights and water and gas. So I got real broke, and I was a photographer for a car magazine when I got sober. And at 8 months sober, I was not making any money. They'd already taken me off the guarantee because I was doing so bad. Because did I mention I was crazy? I'd be heading down to take pictures of boats in Clear Lake, and I'd get halfway down there, the booze would start running beside the car trying to jump in, and I'd go back to the 24-hour club. So I wasn't getting a lot of work done, and I didn't want to quit because I wanted my unemployment, you understand. So they fired me. They offered to let me resign, so it would go on my record after 3 years of being fired. Oh no, I'm not resigning. I'm not quitting. Okay, you're fired. Good. Went straight to New Hope Women's Center and sat down for the meeting, and a couple of guys said, "What's going on? What are you doing here at this time?" Well, so I made them fire me so I can collect. And they said, "Lynn, that little check that you're going to get will not support a life. It will only support an existence, and you'll probably end up drunk behind it." So I went to the phone and I called Bob and I said, "Bob, will you still let me resign?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, good, I resign." And I went back to the meeting and I thought, now you don't have a job and no unemployment money. This is crazy. So Mom and Dad lived at the lake where my sister is now, and I rented their old house from them in Park Place, and I bought a car right about the same time from another drunk in AA, and it blew up 3 weeks later. So I have no car. I'm looking for a job. I can't get back home to the Legacy Club in Pasadena, and the only place close by is the Women's Center, and it's 2 blocks from my house, and I don't like it. Because I went in there for a noon meeting, and there's a guy named Tom Mayhew, and he's talking about how when drunks get sober, they start to dress better, fix their hair better, quit cussing. That was the one. Quit cussing. I left, never came back. But now I have no car and no job, and I'm 2 blocks away from the Women's Center, so I'm there. And I got involved with them. I whined about not having a job for a while, and another guy put me in the car and drove me down Broadway to the airport, and he had me write down every place that I could quickly get a job making money, which is restaurants. And we drove all the way down there, and we came back to the first one, and he let me out of the car, and I said, "Are you going to wait for me here, or do I look for?" He said, "No, I'm going back to Women's Center." I said, "What am I supposed to do?" "Well, you just keep going and applying for jobs, and the Women's Center's not but about a mile and a half." Really? A mile and a half? And he deserted me there. And I went in the first place, Red Lobster, and they don't take applications on Friday, and I'm sitting down to try to figure out where I'm going next, and the manager comes out and says, just give her, let her fill out the application, and she can come back Monday. And so I'm sitting there filling it out, and he came back out, and he said, listen, I need you to start Monday. Just be here at so-and-so. And I'm like, okay. You there? So I had a job. I was not the worst waitress you've ever seen. But I certainly wasn't. I'd get really irritated when they asked me for silverware the second or third time. It's a shrimp. Pick it up. You know? So I have a job, and I'm on the bus. I haven't been on the bus since I was in high school. I have a job. And, you know, and I have all kinds of stuff going on. Anyway, let me think what's next. I think Chamberlain is next. Yes, Chamberlain's next. So it was Christmas time, and I had a year sober in May, and it was Christmas time, and I had a year and a half, and he had 5.5 months. And I'd seen him come in the Legacy Club, but I hadn't really talked to him. And we went on a date, and we got married 3 weeks later. And I thought, good luck strikes twice, you know. Not exactly, you know. So we had a wonderful, wonderful year of marriage. We provided the entertainment for the southeast side of Houston, Alcoholics Anonymous. We had the wedding at the Way Out Women's Center. You know, let's do it right up in the middle of AA. And at the time, I thought that was the worst. Later, I thought this is the worst thing you've ever done. You're going to be so embarrassed. Today, I know I live my life right up in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm going down the tubes, I want y'all to know where I fell so you can grab me by the hair and drag me back out, you know. If I'm doing something that I can't let you know about, not only should I not be doing it, it is, my life depends on me not doing it. So there's nothing in my life that's not an open book. So I had to move out of Mom and Dad's house. We were living in Mom and Dad's house for that year. I had to move out of Mom and Dad's house. You know, he had called we were going to a therapist that the Council on Alcoholism had suggested. She was wonderful. She told me to get out of there. And then he left, and then he came back, and the month later I was hanging in my living room by the neck by his hands, and he was shaking me hard enough to bruise me. And I went to a battered women's, went back to Women's Center where I got married, and they got me into this battered women's shelter. And, you know, I couldn't drink. Y'all had convinced me I couldn't drink over this one. So I had to change some behavior. I left the Women's Center, and I got a job with Skyline Apartments. It was weekly furnished apartments. You could not have dragged me in there with a gun to my head when I was drinking. I didn't go places like that. But there were 10 properties, and 8 of them were managed by women in the program. It was an AA village all over town. I was going to work there, you know, maybe 6 months. That's how long I intended to stay sober when I got here. And 4 years later, I left there. I came into some money. Men, just shut your ear flaps. I had an intrauterine birth control device that was defective, and they had this huge lawsuit, $2.6 billion. And I got $125,942.25 from those lovely people. And I didn't go buy a Mercedes. I threatened my boss that I was going to, and he had me meet him at Baba Yaga's, he and his accountant. And they held my hand behind my back and made me sign that check over to the accountant. And I got to keep $25,000. Which I lived on for the next 2 years as I was going to school at Houston Community College to become a certified occupational therapy assistant. One of my babies did that for a living, and she'd come home and tell me stories about giving people their lives back. And I thought, man, this is what I want to do. So I did that, and I went to work and made nice money. You know, it was, I got to do something that made a difference in people's lives, and not just the people I treated, but their whole families. It was a great job for a drunk like me. You know, I have failed up until then at everything I ever tried to do. I had failed to complete anything. I had failed to live up to my responsibilities as a mother, a wife. I mean, my kids always lived with me. They always had everything they needed. They just didn't have a mother. Something broke emotionally for me when their daddy died. So I go to work, and I bought a house in the Heights. Oh, the apartment I got with Skyline was 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. So naturally, we know God hates a vacuum. So I had girls coming from Rogers Street and this and that, and they'd stay with me for 2 to 6 months and get on their feet, and And so I bought a house in the Heights on the corner of Watson and Pecor, and it has 3 bedrooms, and each bedroom has its own entrance to the outside. So I immediately started getting girls. There's 2 beds in each of the spare bedrooms in the front of the house, and then there's a big living room in between those 2 bedrooms, and then there's a kitchen, and then my area in the back of the house with a door to get out. I used to tell them, if the door's closed from the kitchen to my room, that means you don't knock on that door unless the house is on fire. Serious fire. And for the next 20 years, I had 3 to 4 women at a time living in my house while I got up and went to work. And they would come from way out, which is a 10-day program, and they'd say, I'm just exhausted. I'm going to need to lay down and rest for 2 or 3 days. You're going to lay down and rest on my couch while I get up at 7 and go to work every day. You think that's going to happen? No. The girls who came to my house knew, because we discussed it real carefully, that they had to have a job of some kind within 10 days, or I would help them pack their things in the car, and I would drive them to whatever shelter they wanted to go to. My house was a place for women to get on their feet in recovery and build a life. I had a number of women who, by the time that they were ready to leave, they had boxes under the bed with the dishes, and we'd find them on Craigslist, free stuff. We just have a blast. There were hundreds of women who lived in my house for short or long periods of time. There was one who put her stuff in the room and went to visit her mother at Goodrich for the weekend. And I ended up putting her stuff on the front porch for her to pick up, because she didn't make it through Goodrich for the weekend without drinking, It was, and still is sometimes, absolutely awesome. I got way more from that than any of those women do. In my life, I have 33 years of experience, good and bad, with how to not drink no matter what, and how to begin to do things in a way that sets me up to be able to be sober. Not drinking will not keep me sober. Not drinking is the first step, but it will not keep me sober. I've seen way too many people try it, and some of them had 10 solid years of sobriety, and then they just got busy because life gets so good. And maybe the last lady that just left my house last December, a year ago December, was with me for 6 years. She was in the last group of women that came to my house. And as they all weeded out, and I was turning 65, it's time to quit that stuff. She was going to school. She graduated a year ago, at the end of school anyway, from the U of H with her bachelor's degree. We had talked lovingly over the 6 years about her just staying there forever. And she could take care of me in my old age when I got to where I couldn't get around if I didn't get my wish from God, which is to drop dead. And those of you who are 72 next month like I am understand that wish. And, we talked about that, and then some things happened that last year that convinced me that she needed to go, because she graduated in May, supposed to get her a job in her field. She wasn't doing that, She was still living in my house 6 years later. There was no excuse for her to still be there. She had completed her schooling. No excuse for her not to be getting a job, getting a car, getting on with life. Big girl. And I finally told her at Christmas time, I sent her an email, because I like for people to get emails or text messages from me if it's something difficult, so they can think about it before they react. And her reaction was, in 15 minutes, she's in my room bawling and squalling. Please give me 6 months, not 3 months. I need 6 months. Anyway, she found another place, same deal, right there in the Heights, renting a room in the corner of somebody's life. And I was so disappointed, but it was her choice. 2 months later, she gave that up and got an apartment. She got a car. Oh my God, she comes back about once every week or two. And invariably, I have to step on my lip to not say, I told you so. But I don't, because I know it hurts her feelings. But the fact is, we used to have a fight over the toaster. We never said it out loud. I would move the toaster where I thought it was more convenient. And I'd come back and the toaster would be back, A grown woman ought to be able to decide where her toaster goes. I had a number of women in my house who didn't get the concept of getting on their feet. They thought they needed to get on my feet. And when they first come there now, you have to understand they've been in a detox, they have no job, they have no money, they have no phone half the time. And Net 10, if you catch them on sale, sells a pretty decent phone at Family Dollar for $20. And for 25 more bucks, you can give them 750 minutes, which texts are a minute per text. So you can't find a job. You can't be out on the bus when you're 10 days, 20 days sober and no way to get hold of anybody. Job employers don't want to wait till you get home and call them back. So I'd get them a phone and I'd get them cigarettes if they smoked. We always had to get panties. I don't know why women never have panties when they go to detox. I had panties when I went to jail, But anyway, then the girls would start working and they'd bring their whole paycheck home. And a whole lot of them, when that first paycheck would come, that decision time. Do I take Lynn that paycheck, pay what I owe, and have her standing by to give me necessary money for bus passes? Or do I just take that paycheck, go somewhere else, get me a place, and I'll pay her back later? I've been paid back later twice in 33 years. Anyway, so I had the house. I don't know where I was going when I lost track of it, but I lost track of it. In 1998, my daughter went to jail for crack cocaine. I was 51 years old. Had 3 girls in the house. My 3 grandsons were 4, 6, and 9, and they came to stay with Nana. Oh, God. They came from a virtual crack house. They were crazy. They didn't sleep. We'd be up all night. I had them in daycare. I'd drop them off in the morning and go to work and then pick them up. And we'd go get something from McDonald's and we'd go to the Northside 24-Hour Club for their 6:30 meeting. The boys would eat half the meeting, and then I bought the club a basketball hoop and basketballs to hang on the driveway. And they'd go out there where I could watch them from the window. And they were just crazy. 2 weeks. God of my understanding has a wicked sense of humor. 2 weeks after those boys came, my company came to me and said, we need you to do us a favor. We need you to do this pediatric caseload for just a couple of months till we find somebody. So in a 2-week period, I went from being a 51-year-old carefree woman with a house and adult women living with me to being the full-time custodian of 3 boys and 15 children from 0 to 3 years old that I was treating as in occupational therapy. I really thought God had gotten me again. I thought we were over that got me stuff. If I was doing the right thing, staying up under your breastbone, I'd be safe, right? Well, maybe this is safe. Okay, we'll try it. I still did pediatrics until I retired last year at 70. And I still go back and do vacation work. I crawl around the floor with kids and toys, and somebody gives me money for that. Can you imagine? It is so awesome. And if I thought I made a difference in the lives of my patients and their families when I was doing geriatrics, pediatrics is beyond it. I have met and 12-stepped a number of members of Alcoholics Anonymous who also happen to be the parents, the totally bewildered, scared to death, staying drunk to survive parents of massively disabled children. And I had the information they needed, and God put me right there in front of them, and it was awesome. I love my life. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love my life. My daughter, now I'm running out of time. Okay. My daughter got sober in November the 16th of 1999. Her brother was living in Crockett, Texas, working for her husband's brother at a junkyard, and a very drunk junkyard. And he went to jail for 2 marijuana cigarettes in his pocket, and he got probation, which he wasn't able to keep. So he went to jail for 6 months. And he decided that he'd rather go to jail and not get on probation again. He turned down probation. I don't want to have to go in and check in and pay that probation fee. I'd rather just get it over with. And Kathy and I looked at each other and said, he doesn't want to quit drinking. And about a month after he got to jail, he really would have done overs if they would have allowed him to. He didn't know about being locked up in a jail cell for long periods of time. But in Crockett, Texas, it's not Houston, Texas, you know. And I would complain to Kathy, I haven't heard from Carl, it's been a week and a half, and I'm worried about him. And she'd call the jailer, and the jailer would go back there and drag him out of the cell and bring him up and make him call me. They respect motherhood in Crockett, Texas, I promise. So when he got out of jail, I went and picked him up. I went and visited him once while he was up there. I did make sure he had minimal money on his account, but I'm not rewarding anybody for being in jail. And then he called to let me know he was coming home, and I picked him up and drove him directly to Extended Aftercare, which at that time was a very good treatment facility, and I knew a lot of people involved there over off Shepherd, and they made him wait 30 days and go stay at my house, where I worked him to death for 30 days. At that time by then I had 3 houses and 12 apartments in the Heights, so I always had something to do to let somebody pay their board. I had girls that painted houses and all kinds of stuff till they could get a job. I said, you have to have some money-making job, and it's not your boyfriend. Anyway, so my son's sobriety date is March the 4th of 2003. Those 3 boys, who were 4, 6, and 9, are 25, 27, and 30 now. The oldest one had 2 years recovery last May when he went to prison. He was able to get a plea deal, and he only has to serve 4 years, which he will actually be out this year. He went to jail sober, clean and sober. In my family, that's like graduating from Yale. You know? He is clearing up the wreckage of his past, and when he finishes that, he will be clean from having to look over his shoulder. He had tried to turn himself in twice, and they couldn't find the warrant for his failure to complete his probation. And then his middle brother, the only one in my family who's not in recovery and doesn't need to be, I think they may have switched babies on us at the hospital. He was getting married on a cruise ship, and we were all going on a cruise from Galveston. And we got on the boat, and it was wonderful. And as we're pulling in, I heard, Jesse Roselle, please come to customer service. And I thought, what has he done? Customs is much more careful when you're coming back in the country. So that's how he ended up in prison. And the youngest grandson, Thomas, had 3 years last July. He and his wife celebrate the same day. They are now estranged since Thanksgiving and getting a divorce, and he hasn't had to drink or drug over it. New Hope had a chili cook-off. A lot of people drink and drug over that. If I don't want to get what I want in my relationship, oh my God, I just have to go drink. Or I'm embarrassed to go to the club because they told us not to get into this. Don't be embarrassed, just don't be drunk. Anyway, New Hope had a chili cook-off here a while back. And when it came time to do the silent auction, my grandson ran that silent auction. I was so proud. My boys are not just sober. They're actively sober. They both have sponsors. They both sponsor people, even when time gets tough. When Jesse went to jail, the guy in his cell with him was somebody he knew from the wheelhouse. He said, oh my God, what are you doing here? He said, your daddy put me here. He sold my ex-son-in-law a hot trailer, and Eddie made him tell him, don't be selling me a hot trailer. Oh, I'm not. I bought it. Blah, 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 blah. He said, okay. He said, I'm going to take a picture of you and this bill of sale you're giving me. And he took the picture, and 3 weeks later, the cops pulled him over. The trailer was hot. He turned him in. So Jesse when they first got there, was sponsoring this guy in a jail cell. I love it. I love it. I love it. I don't know what the bottom line of my story is. I guess it's just simply, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens, what doesn't happen. If I wake up this morning and everything in my world is perfect, wonderful. I'm going to enjoy the hell out of it. If I fall off that pink cloud, I'm going to do what Peaches told me to do. I'm going to climb back up on it. While I'm up on it, I'm going to suck it dry of every bit of good feeling there is, because that will motivate me to climb up those steps to get back on it. The problem is always in the steps, no matter what's going on in my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Let's give her another round. My name's Terry and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Terry.
I believe we have the Ask It Basket.
No.
What is it?
Hold on.
Read her shirt. What's after this?
What does it say?
North Houston Fellowship Roundup Recovery.
No, after Lynn C.
Dawn.
Like after Lynn C.
Oh, I don't know.
What's next on the schedule?
Oh, yeah, I don't know what we just did. Ask It Basket.
At what time?
At 2:45. Ask It Basket at 2:45. There we
All right,
go.
look. You can tell we're in AA.
Hey.
So at 2:45 we'll have the Ask It Basket. If y'all don't know what that is, we have written some questions down to ask all the speakers. They'll come up here, draw a question, and they'll each answer it in their own experience, strength, and hope. Something to look forward to. We'll take a little break when we get to that. Let's have some more fun. Thank you guys. Oh yeah, circle up for prayer. You guys don't know.
5:30.
Give me your hand, Matt. I never Why is this so hard? It's all good. Come on, right now.
Oh, you okay? Sounds good. All right.
Leah, would you like to take some?
Who's large and in charge?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back, it works if you work it.